Professor David Rees is Satoshi Nakamoto. So it came out in the court case that there were three original developers of Bitcoin, and it was super obvious. Like, the courts didn't rule that these guys were Satoshi, but they ruled that Craig Wright does not have to pay any Bitcoin to Dave Klieman estate. But anyway, it says it right here, right? This is an alleged text message conversation where you can only see Craig's CSW, Craig Stephen Wright, Craig Satoshi Wright. You can only see his side of the conversation, but yeah, and anyway, like right here, it's just like he's talking to this person. We'll get into this thing. This is crazy. This is not something that was released in court. This is an alleged text conversation, but it matches all the information that came out in court and also everything he's been saying in interviews for the last 3 or 4 years. So anyway, Craig says Satoshi was me, Dave Klieman, and Professor David Rees. So case closed. Not really. Let's get into this thing. Supposedly, yeah, Professor David Rees is the third secret member of the Satoshi Nakamoto group. Both of those guys are dead now. And we'll get into who he is, like a little bit of Craig Wright's family. This is a super, super rabbit hole. This conversation, if it's a real thing, is crazy, but I would view it more as like stuff to kind of go research if you want to start like diving into the Bitcoin rabbit hole. This is crazy stuff. Anyway, here's Craig supposedly talking to some key Chinese person that's involved in Bitcoin, right? Okay, so Craig, this is crazy. Watch this conversation. Do you want me to step up as a leader, the steward of Bitcoin, until someone better comes, right? And you don't get the other side of the conversation, but of course he's like, who's better? Someone better is when I am no longer best, and miners choose another. I don't want to lead forever. I'll do it now as long as it takes, at any cost personally. But we need one day a person who will take over and be willing to steward, not be king. I only support the original Bitcoin. And this is something that Craig has been saying since the Bitcoin Cash fork, is that the white paper does not match the BTC fork. And that version won't scale because of the block sizes. Like, this is the whole big argument between the forks. But he says, I only support the original Bitcoin, which is the white paper. They compete. I keep studying. I keep teaching. I invest all I have in making BCH, and this is the Bitcoin Cash fork, to 5 billion. So that's his fork, and that's what he's been saying the whole time, that the Bitcoin Cash fork matches the white papers, and that he invented this thing and actually has legal ownership of the blockchain database in some aspects, and he has, it's his white paper. And this came out in court too. Like, his dad in court is like, yeah, I saw the white paper before he published it. And we'll get more into his family, because David Rees is involved with his grandfather. But anyway, when I make 5 billion, you let me vanish again. So like, this is some person that has an insane amount of influence in China apparently, and he's like asking him if he should step up, or asking him permission to like vanish. Like, this is pretty wild. Like, another like super key person, for good. Okay, me, my hashes is Bitcoins, the hash of my partners, my supporters, right? My money, my patents. So he's been talking about all of his patents that he has, and we'll get into that a little bit later here. And then the other person is probably like, okay, yeah. And he's like, then I agree. And like, who are you going to come out as? Like, are you going to come out as Satoshi? He's like, I am me. I'm all that's left alive of what was Satoshi. So yeah, if David Klieman and Professor Rees are Satoshis, they're both dead. And I don't think there's any like intrigue about that. Like, Professor Rees was like 90 something, like 95, a friend of his grandpa. And Dave Klieman had a whole list of health issues. But it was like MRSA that he died from. So I don't think there's any intrigue around that, but who knows? You could research that if you like. Yeah, and we are now all who want stable global money. I have a family. I'm Cody. So like, I'm Cody is, I think that's a Reddit username, and I don't know if he's referring to this person as that, or if this person is part of his family, or I'm not sure what that line means. But yeah, let's continue. Where are we? Yeah, I have family. I never wanted to be public, right? And then Craig says, Satoshi was me, Dave Klieman, and Professor David Rees. So he's like trying to explain who Satoshi is, but also asking this person permission. It's like a pretty weird interchange, like what's their relationship, and like explaining some stuff with Bitcoin, like the words. Like he's like no, hash is Bitcoin. Like that's his like slang for Bitcoins. We'll buy enough hash to win. In 2020, we will kill BTC. Not we will kill Bitcoin, the BTC fork of Bitcoin, which does not match the white paper, right? So yeah, like 2020, there's supposed to be some huge event or something that kills Bitcoin. I don't know. I can't think of like anything really that happened in 2020. Like, that maybe involved China. I don't know. Nothing like that happened. But yeah, anyway, I know it is sad Haipo. I don't know, that's like a typo. But Haipo, that's like Haipo Yang was one of the coin exchanges. He came out and said that BCH is the real Bitcoin. And then I think went to jail. I can't remember what happened to him. He sort of like disappeared somehow or something. But yeah, go look up Haipo and BCH. Anyway, Craig says, together we are strong, and my patents are for BCH. So he has apparently hundreds of patents related to different aspects of Bitcoin and like architecture and things like that. But as far as the actual blockchain goes, his patents are for BCH. And I haven't heard him say that specifically in interviews. I just heard him say he has a lot of patents related to different parts of Bitcoin and stuff like that. But anyway, that's cool. And he's like, I hold a broom to clean up Bitcoin. So I guess he's talking about coming out with his patents. This is something I've said in a few videos. That he's said this in interviews a bunch of times, but not the broom. The broom is so dramatic. We'll have to start calling him the sweeper. I hold a broom to clean up Bitcoin. China is important for Bitcoin. The U.S. cannot win. So I don't know if this means U.S. is against Bitcoin and we can't let them win, or if U.S. is for Bitcoin and U.S. can't win without China, or I don't know. What do you guys think this means? I'm not sure, but like this conversation is on the level of nations right here. And this is pretty deep and crazy rabbit hole here. This is pretty crazy. And he's like, I have security now. And I don't know if this means like personal security or some kind of security thing to do with the blockchain. But anyway, my grandfather and David were friends. So there's two Davids here, but he's talking about David Rees. And this is true. Like, his grandfather is Ronald Lyman, who is a cryptographer, mathematician, and like an interrogator in World War II, that worked with David Rees, who is one of the Bitcoin mathematicians and early designers that worked with him, and then also Turing. Alan Turing, the guy that invented the Turing machine, which is one of the earliest computers that they used to crack like the Nazi codes in World War II. And like when Craig comes out and says like Bitcoin is not just like a cash thing, like it is a Turing complete computer system. Like Turing is like family friends. When he says Turing complete, like this is pretty cool. Like it's like somebody they know and worked with. But yeah, you can listen to him explain Turing completeness. It just has to do with like when you're processing something, do you know that it can be computed or not? And so that's important, so that you don't just like run computing something that can't be finished or something. But anyway, Hal was a better coder than me. So Hal was a developer that came on to Bitcoin later after the Satoshi trio. It's Hal Finney. This is the guy that got the first Bitcoin wallet transfer. He's dead also now. And that was MLS or ALS, something like that. I don't know. He had a medical condition as well. But anyway, Craig said that he wrote a bunch of bad code and Hal fixed a bunch of it. He said this in interviews a bunch as well. But he's like, yeah, I had a lot of buggy code that he fixed. I admit I'm an average dev. Yeah, Hal code's way better than me. Support the dream, free money, stable money. Bitcoin is Blacknet. Now, Blacknet, I think, is one of the coin exchange software platforms with a wallet, but I think this may be the one. In the court case, they were debating about like a coin exchange software thing, and this might be it or not. I'm not sure about that, but you can go look up Blacknet. It's just like a kind of like coin exchange software. But yeah, it's complete in November, and so this is 2000. What year? It was at the top here. Okay, yeah, 2018. This is like the end of 2018. This conversation. Free money, stable money, Bitcoin is Blacknet. Yeah, it's complete in November. So I guess the code and everything for this was done a couple of years ago, and all of this stuff has kind of been tied up in court. And like his ex-wife, Craig's ex-wife, is part of the trust that owns part of the business, that owns part of this stuff. And that was like the whole court case was talking about all that stuff, the business and the trust and the Dave Klieman's like family estate and who has property to what. But they ended up awarding $100 million to the business, which Dave was 25% owner of. And so I think there's still probably more court proceedings with that, something to do with his ex-wife. Anyway, let's continue. I'm a C programmer, just not a good one. Hal came in around 2008. He helped us. And this is wild. I do not want your respect. Like he's saying this to this person. First he's asking him if he should come out as a leader. And now he's like, I don't want your respect. Just 5 billion people using BCH, the fork that is supposedly matches the white paper. And he says he has patents that he can prove that he did everything and that this is the correct fork. And it has mostly to do with the blocks being scalable. And he'll come out and talk about Lightning Network. Like the reason it's distributed, it's not so you distribute all the miners. The point of distributing the decentralization of the blockchain is so you're widely publishing the tree so that everybody can prove it hasn't changed. It's a security feature. But like the blocks need to be scalable, right? Because this basically Bitcoin is used as like a third party. Like any case where you could cheat or something like that, you need like a trusted third party. Like Bitcoin can be a trusted third party, but it's not like a small group of people that you have to trust. It's like everyone on the entire blockchain can verify this thing hasn't changed. So that's the whole idea. But yeah, anyway, like when he comes out talking about like Lightning, it's like, hey, you completely screwed up the blocks and you hit a ceiling where you can't scale it. He's been working on scaling this thing for like the last 10 years. And the Lightning Network is like a trusted third party type of thing where you're not using the number one security feature of the whole blockchain. Like it needs to be scalable and you need to be able to use it as a trusted third party basically. But anyways, he's trying to get 5 billion people onto the BCH fork, and I don't know how that's going at the moment. David Rees was an amazing mathematician. Yeah, him and my grandfather worked with Turing. So this is true. You can go look this up. And this is crazy because like Turing is one of the people that invented one of the first like mechanical computers. Like they had computers sort of before all of this where they had like people like doing math equations in a room and stuff. Like those were the first computers. But Turing created the Turing machine with well, I don't know if his grandfather worked on like the Turing machine with him, but they worked together. Yeah, and then Adam Rees, all three of those, Professor Adam Rees, worked together. His grandfather Turing and Adam Rees, and they're cryptographer mathematicians that were inventing the first computer systems. Like this is his family. So this is pretty crazy when you go research this guy. Yeah, so anyway, he's like, David Rees died a few years ago. And then we do not have global money. Yeah, so I do not deserve respect if this fails. So yeah, he's like, David Rees died a few years ago. But then they're like talking about Bitcoin as global money. And he's like, we don't have global money. Like, I don't deserve respect if it fails. Like, how are you going to make sure it doesn't fail or whatever, right? It's like, we work, we make it work. David Rees, David Klieman, Hal, they're all dead. This is true. But they all died of normal stuff. I don't think there's anything there, but I don't know. Talk in the comments, like, if you know anything that I don't. And again, like, this is not, I don't think this was released in court, but it matches most of the stuff that was released in court. And this is quite a thing here. But he's like, I have to go. But 2020, around the halving, something happens. So, like, did something happen in 2020? Like, I don't know. Think about 2020 and think about Bitcoin. But anyway, he's like, BTC will die. More soon. Gavin is a good guy. Now, I don't know if he's like good guy versus the bad guys kind of statement, or if it's like Gavin's a pretty good dude. I'm not sure what he's saying here, but this is Gavin Andresen, Bitcoin core dev that came on later. Let him rest. He deserves family. I envy him. My 2 boys are in uni now, and I hardly saw them grow up. This is like, this whole thing is crazy for Craig, because like, he's been working on this nonstop for the last, who knows, before 2008. I mean, it goes back a lot farther than that. But he's been working on this like the whole time his kids have been growing up, and he barely saw them grow up. And then David Klieman is like his best friend that he was working with, and he died. Like, you see him like crying in court and stuff. I've seen him like tear up in interviews talking about it as well. So this is a pretty wild thing with Craig. But anyway, yeah, Craig says Gavin knows I am. So they're talking about if Gavin knows that he's Satoshi, and he's like, yeah, Gavin knows I am. It was not my computer. So there was that whole thing where there was like a signature, and it was like, wait, is this thing real or not? And Gavin's like, yeah, he's Satoshi. And then he's like, oh no, he's not, because whatever, I don't know. I was like, but he's like, yeah, Gavin knows I'm Satoshi. And then it's repeating. My 2 boys are in uni now. I hardly saw them grow up. And then probably he's asking like, what happened with the whole signature debacle thing? And he's like, it wasn't my computer. Gavin had a message. I don't know what that means, like if he received a message or he sent a message. I don't know, but some message type situation with Gavin, something. He knows, and anyway, he deserves time with his family. I have others now. What about like Mike? And this is Mike, what's his name? Mike Hearn, I think. One of the other Bitcoin core devs. He's like, yeah, Mike does. Like, Mike knows that I'm Satoshi. I'll explain later what happened with Gavin. Good night for now. So, the secret third person in the Satoshi trio, because he came out in court and openly was said in court that there are 3 people that originally developed Bitcoin, but it didn't say that those 3 people are Satoshi in court. Like, the court didn't like have to rule on like, oh, the Satoshi pseudonym or whatever. But anyway, yeah, it's pretty plainly stated in this conversation, but I don't know if this conversation is real. Like, I don't think this should be taken as like a real thing. Just a bunch of things that you could go research if you want to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and try to figure out everything that's going on with the insane like world financial system and all of that stuff. And like, Bitcoin it's not just like a little money transfer system. Like, oh, go watch Theory of Bitcoin. Those videos on YouTube, it's a series of, I don't know how many it is. It's like 50 something hours of YouTube videos that explain like every piece of how Bitcoin works. And it's interviews with Craig just explaining like how he built it and how it works. Like Bitcoin itself is a computer. Like, the blockchain, like most of the computer operations that like your computer processor does, it does matrix math, which is like rows and columns, and it calculates, logical operators and numbers. It does math, like your computer processor is doing math, and it uses like matrix operations to do the math. But on the blockchain, you can just put all of the rows in one column, and you can do matrix operations. So it's just like a new way. It's a new type of computer, basically. And then it's widely distributed and decentralized so that nobody can cheat. Everybody has a copy. You can't change something without everyone noticing. And so like the implications of what it can be used for are way huger than just money. But money is like the one thing that's super easy to cheat at, like that everyone tries to cheat, is stealing money or printing money or whatever. Like it's really hard to keep stable money, and it's very important. So like that was built into Bitcoin to begin with, and that's where the name came from. But you can do anything that needs to be like anything that you would do with a trusted third party. Like you won't need that anymore. You can just do it on the blockchain. Like you could have encrypted stuff on the blockchain, like that people can't see, but they can verify that it hasn't changed. Or you could have completely public stuff, like voting could go on the blockchain and everyone can see it. Or contracts with like buying a house or something, like that could go on encrypted. That's your personal contract, but everyone could verify that it hasn't changed. And then you can do math, and it's like a base layer of a computer where you can build an entire internet, basically computer system out of this. It's a protocol, and it's wouldn't replace the internet, but it would be like a whole layer, a computing layer on top of the internet, where you could have security. Basically, it's a secure computing system. And you can have all kinds of other systems outside of that, like we do on the internet. But yeah, anyway, that's like the whole idea with Bitcoin, that almost nobody like understands. Or like all these altcoins, people are just like printing them up and pre-mining and doing all this nonsense. He calls all these people gamblers. And yeah, check out the rabbit hole. This thing is pretty wild. Yeah, so that's the idea with Bitcoin. And I'm not gonna do like financial charts on this video, but basically Bitcoin's just kind of sitting at support and hasn't made a big move yet. And the stock market's kind of up at resistance and hasn't really made a big move yet. So nothing much going on today in the stocks or the Bitcoin charts. So I'll just leave you with this insane this insane trail. The reluctant leader of Bitcoin is stepping up and has a pile of patents. And anyone that says he's a fraud still after everything came out in court probably hasn't looked at all the court cases. Like, go look at everything. Go look at my videos on this. I'll set up a playlist also and put all these videos in there. But it's going to be pretty obvious when he comes out with patents and he says, like, I have legal rights to the blockchain. Like, I created the blockchain, and the BTC fork, like, the code is open source. That's fine. You can look at the code, take it, write your own version of the code. It's open source, but the blockchain itself is not. Like, that's his blockchain that he created, and like everyone's allowed to use it. So the rights are interesting legal situation, but like you can't take the entire database with all the data in it and copy it and say it's yours and say it's Bitcoin. Like, that's what he's been saying in interviews and stuff. So when he throws a pile of patents on the desk and says this publicly, I think this is going to be probably a negative for the BTC fork of Bitcoin. And then also the BCH fork is what, according to this, he has his patents on, a lot of them. And the BSV fork is a newer upgrade that I think is the one that he wants to use and he says is Bitcoin. So that's the outlook on Bitcoin. Tell me what you think, if any of this is true, or like, who are these people? Who's he talking to in this message? Like, this is some like mega person. Yeah, and China is involved, and there's a whole world financial system situation and all kinds of stuff. All the tensions between like China and America and stuff seem like they could be related to this whole situation. Monetary system stuff. All the crazy money printing stuff. And you have like Jerome Powell coming out talking about like digital money. Like, we don't have to be the first one, but we just have to get it right. Like, what's going on? I don't know. It's still crazy. Like, there's a bunch of puzzle pieces here, and they're not all quite fitting together yet. But not investment or legal advice or any kind of advice. Just something I found and wanted to chat about. But yeah, if you put together like the court case information and the interviews and you actually study Bitcoin, things will start becoming a lot more clear. Yeah, so yeah, hope that was fun, and see you next video.